Good evening. Health authorities have...
These vehicles may or may not have mechanical...
It will be a trial within a trial.
Louise Neimer at the Ontario...
The city does have a bylaw that requires...
On City TV, Channel 79, Cable 7, this is CityPulse Tonight with Bill Cameron.
Good evening. This is what's happening. Some big constitutional parties on the eve of the great occasion. We have the hoopla here and in Ottawa, including some words from the Trudeau who wasn't invited. The Falklands, some encouraging words from the diplomats, but the British fleet is still heading south. And Peter Gross with a preview of an engrossing springtime sport, Armadillo racing. First, the Constitution. The Queen approves the new document tomorrow. Tonight, your very highest society is out in Ottawa, and the monarch is at the center of the activity. The nation will lose its political connection with Britain tomorrow, but not its emotional connection with Britain's Queen. And tonight, the mood in Ottawa is very royalist. Our political editor, Colin Vaughan, and Gord Martineau are in Ottawa tonight for the politics and the party. They have some thoughts on the celebration so far.
Gordon Martineau and I are here tonight at the National Arts Centre, and about to start inside is a gala performance to celebrate the Canadian Constitution. And Gordon, I was thinking earlier today, I've been coming up to Ottawa now for close to 2 years. I've been up to constitutional conferences, First Ministers' conferences, meetings of premiers, and I felt jaded. But tonight, it really is a celebration. It's going to be a great day tomorrow.
It looks like an Academy Awards night, and I'm very proud to be here. This is an historic moment in this country's history. It makes you proud to be a Canadian. I'm glad I came.
Well, I feel the same way, and I think it is going to be a great festival. And just a few minutes ago, I talked to Premier William Davis, one of the modern-day fathers of Confederation, as he went into the National Arts Centre. You're the man who broke the log jam last fall. You're a true modern-day father of Confederation. Are you proud?
Well, I'm proud. I'm, I guess, a little bit emotional. For me, it's been over 10 years in this process. And tomorrow is going to be a great day for this country. It's not everything that we wanted, but it's a good part of it. And yes, I'm proud, not as a person, but I'm just very proud to be a Canadian. And then just as Colin Vaughan wrapped up his interview with Premier Davis, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth and His Royal Highness Prince Philip arrived here at the National Arts Centre for the start of tonight's gala performance. It promises to be an exciting evening and a very proud one for everyone in Canada. Gord Martineau at the National Arts Centre in Ottawa for CityPulse Tonight.
As Colin mentioned, a big artistic extravaganza at the Arts Centre tonight to celebrate all this. Dancers, singers, performers from across the country honored the Queen's visit. There was a fair range of activity for the regal.
Born to grace her country's throne, born to reign as England's own, Elizabeth.
And for the Bob and Doug set.
Back to Adam in the Garden of Eden. Adam, the first Canadian. Oh, yes, he was. Nobody but a Canadian would stand in a perfect tropical garden beside a perfect naked woman and get excited about an apple.
Colin tells us the Queen was amused. Even if you don't care for the new Constitution, and a lot of people don't, you have to admit it is a political triumph for Prime Minister Trudeau, possibly his last. Gord caught up with the Prime Minister tonight.
Mr. Davis said he was very proud to be a Canadian on this night. I'm wondering about your feelings, sir.
I didn't start today being very proud to be a Canadian.
Earlier today, the Queen visited St. Bartholomew's Anglican Church in Ottawa. There were hundreds of spectators on hand for that, including a royalist beagle, perhaps trying to pass as a corgi. The Queen's route took her down the street another prominent Ottawa citizen lives on. Colin couldn't resist the chance for an interview.
It's an interesting moment, though. It's a pity that you're not at lunch.
Oh, yes, but no. I'm very proud just to be an ordinary Canadian.
Whoever said you were an ordinary Canadian?
Well, I feel that more and more, and I'm proud to be.
There are a lot of Canadians who wish this party weren't happening. A lot of them live in Quebec, including the premier of that province, René Lévesque. In Hull, across the river from today's goings-on in the capital, a counter-demonstration. Some 400 people marched through the city core, burning copies of a mock constitution. All the same, a good many well-known Québécois are completely for the Constitution. Among them, of course, the Justice Minister, Jean Chrétien, who jockeyed the package through Westminster. Colin caught up with him today.
Of course, for Mr. Lévesque, it was difficult to agree because how come he would have signed, if he had signed, he would have become a father of the new confederation. And, he's a separatist. So he had a problem. More than I have no problem. I'm a Canadian, I'm proud of it. And I'm coming from Quebec, and it is possible to be a good French-speaking person from Quebec and be a proud Canadian.
Here in Toronto, several thousand people turned up at Nathan Phillips Square to participate in municipal Constitution celebrations.
Raise! Set! Arm! Stand! Arm!
Chum's Dick Smythe has been thinking about the National Party, and he is not breaking out the champagne. Here's tonight's comment.
Canada is a perverse and contradictory nation, and it soon will have a constitution to fit, a document well suited to a land which plays baseball and hockey simultaneously. The new document, to be proclaimed by the Queen this weekend, is something befitting a people whose loftiest aspirations are given voice by the Mackenzie brothers. Compromise is the great Canadian talent. The new Constitution is a classic example in compromise, with ringing declarations of fudge. A Constitution is much like a legal agreement, which in effect it is, between the government and the governed. I would hesitate to sign any agreement which allowed one of the parties to change the rules halfway through, which ignored basic principles, or which I had not personally had the chance to inspect. Yet the Constitution allows opting out. It treats Native peoples and Anglophone Quebecers as second-class citizens. It was never put to either the official opposition to or to the people, and it ensures what Mr. Trudeau may have wanted in the first place, which is the separation of Quebec. It was a creation of scheming, loudmouthed, myopic, greedy politicians. All the tinsel and huzzas in Ottawa, in which liberals and their liberal friends will participate this weekend, cannot conceal the fact that the Constitution is a shoddy exercise in political ambition and Pierre Trudeau's bid for immortality. Mr. Trudeau, who desperately wants to be the father of his country, has succeeded only in spawning a bastard.
A bit later on the program, we will be opening the phone lines to talk about post-constitutional Canada. Now that we have the BNA Act sorted out, there are a few other things on the agenda. The question we're using to get things started: do you think Canada will survive its second century? If you have a comment, give us a call at 870-9112. Metro homicide detectives tonight are trying to piece together the mystery surrounding the discovery of a body this afternoon in Scarborough. Kevin Evans reports.
The body was found in the back of this van just after 3 this afternoon. The van was parked in the rear of an apartment complex at 960 Markham Road. The building superintendent made the grisly discovery while checking parking stickers. Prior to today, he'd never seen the van before. It's believed it was parked there last night. Just after 8 tonight, the body was identified by this man who saw our report on CityPulse at 6 and came to the scene because he thought he recognized the van. The body was removed shortly after that. There are no lights in this parking lot. It's pitch black. It's easy to see how someone could leave a van here in the middle of the night and no one would notice. Police have identified the dead man, but as of airtime, they were not releasing his name. All we know is that he's about in his 20s and is Caucasian. It had appeared earlier that he had died from a beating, but homicide detectives on the scene here have told me that they're not so sure the beating is what killed him, and it will require an autopsy to determine the precise cause of death. From 960 Markham, Kevin Evans for CityPulse Tonight.
Now, with an early look at what's happening out on the streets tonight, our chief assignment editor, Glenn Cole.
Bill, 31-year-old Phyllis Mansfield of 128 Ashdale is in critical condition in the burn unit of Toronto General Hospital tonight after receiving third-degree burns to 60% of her body. She was not satisfied with the progress of a barbecue and poured more lacquer thinner onto the burning coals. The container and the barbecue exploded. Her husband suffered slight burns to his right hand. 41 Division and 4 Traffic dealing with an accident at Ellesmere and Markham Road. The driver looked over at her passenger when he began to suffer a heart attack. lost control of the vehicle which struck a hydro pole. 2 children on board were slightly injured. Metro ambulance is transporting the injured to hospital. And I'll have more on Street Beat later on in the show. Bill.
Thank you, Glenn. Ontario's doctors are giving the rotating strike a rest. They're to start again Monday. Today it was downtown Toronto's turn, and there was a lot of heat over the strikes at the political level. Barbara Laskin reports.
The doctors' rotating strikes are affecting most central downtown hospitals. All elective surgery has been canceled at Toronto General, Mount Sinai Hospital, Women's College Hospital, and the Hospital for Sick Children. Toronto's Orthopedic and Arthritic Hospital was not affected by today's strike. None of its doctors canceled any operations. Earlier today at Queen's Park, the doctors' strike was hotly debated, with Liberal leader Jim Peterson complaining the College of Physicians and Surgeons can't possibly monitor any doctors' misconduct during the strike because the college is composed of doctors. But Health Minister Larry Grossman disagreed, claiming the college was living up to its policing responsibilities. And once again, he expressed his displeasure with the doctors' walkout, which today affected the Hospital for Sick Children.
I don't think anyone in this province can doubt that the Sick Children's Hospital is special and unique, not only in this province, but perhaps in the world. And I just wouldn't consider under any circumstances apologizing for singling out Sick Children's Hospital as a hospital which absolutely should have been left untouched by any job action.
Although negotiations have been going on here all day between the OMA and the provincial government, they won't have any effect on next week's continuing strike action. On Monday, doctors at Sunnybrook, North York General, and Branson hospitals will refuse to do elective surgery. Barbara Laskin for CityPulse Tonight.
The chemical spill in the Bloor-Lansdowne area a couple of weeks ago has been traced to the Nakan Chemical Company. Apparently, some of the company's employees mixed 800 to 900 gallons of chemicals and dumped them into the sewer system. Earlier today, Lorne Honickman talked to officials of the Ministry of Environment and to Vice President of Nakan, John Shepherd, about possible charges.
Plan of action, would there be criminal charges?
Of course, this is up to the ministry, and they are, I'm sure, looking into this now. It's could be dealt with under the Environmental Protection Act.
Somebody admits to dumping 800 gallons of chemicals into a sewer. Is that not case closed?
Well, not necessarily. It's, first of all, when you dump it into a sewer, whether or not that's a natural environment, that's something which has to be determined by Legal Services Branch. There are other matters involved as well. And it's something which Legal Services has to take a very careful look at before we can go ahead with charges.
After this, what seems to be a breakthrough in the Falklands dispute. Argentina appears willing to cooperate. Britain isn't sure. While on the Falklands, the military are all over the place.
Trying to do what the hell I can, because these people don't know what the hell they're doing, and they're fighting amongst themselves.
There might be a diplomatic end to the Falkland Islands dispute yet. Argentina has apparently agreed to a solution. U.S. Secretary of State Alexander Haig will take that solution to Britain tomorrow. So far, Britain's response has been one of indifference. Steve Delaney reports.
The British government has already rejected suggestions which would leave the islands under Argentine administration while negotiations go on. So officials here are being cautious about reports of optimism coming out of Buenos Aires. Mrs. Thatcher has left Downing Street for the weekend, and a Foreign Office figure says if there is something new in the wind, it would almost surely surprise his boss, Foreign Secretary Francis Pym. If there is a new formula, it would almost surely have to conform to the well-known British priorities, which would include a return of British administration to the islands. Since all this began, there has not been the slightest hint of a back-down in the British position, which is that Argentina must get its troops and its flag off those islands before anything else can happen. Diplomacy goes on, measured against the continued advance of the British task force. In that force is a unit of the Royal Marines. Marine commando units train for precisely the type of combat they may encounter in trying to recapture the Falklands. There is no snow yet in the islands, but there soon will be, and the Marines are at home in it. Their role in NATO is to secure control of northern Norway against aggression from the east. They are experienced in ship-to-shore assault techniques of the kind they would have to employ if ordered to storm the Falklands. Steve Delaney, NBC News, London.
We hadn't seen any reports from the Falklands since Britain's blockade took effect, but Robin Lloyd has managed to get there. He says there are a lot of empty homes and an extensive military buildup.
This is the airport on the Falkland Islands. No commercial flights or private planes come in here. It's a military airfield busy with preparations for war and defense. Food supplies and ammunition are brought in daily by jet from the mainland. The Argentines call this their air bridge, the way they avoid confronting the British blockade. From the airport, helicopters move into the interior to remote military outposts. Soldiers wait to receive orders on what their new combat positions will be. The road from the airfield to Port Stanley, the former capital under the British, is filled with troops. 10,000 soldiers are in the Falkland Islands now, and more are coming each day. The Argentine governor, General Mario Menendez, says the British blockade has not affected his operation. In the town of Port Stanley, life has changed a great deal since the Argentine invasion. The streets are virtually empty. Hundreds of people already have left for the countryside, where they hope they will be safe. Throughout the town, military presence is everywhere, and the residents who have stayed behind clearly are not happy about it.
I'm trying to do what the hell I can, because these people don't know what the hell they're doing, and they're fighting amongst themselves.
Argentine military officials say the Falkland Islanders are free to leave at any time. At this time, these officials say they are only deporting people who they believe are seriously resisting Argentine occupation. Robin Lloyd, NBC News, Port Stanley in the Falkland Islands.
Next on CityPulse Tonight, you can enjoy life after 65.
We certainly have had a super time. There's no doubt about that. We've enjoyed our retirement tremendously, and I think mainly because we're together.
Tonight, the final part of our series on aging. Barbara Laskin reports that for many people, growing old is close to a pleasure.
Whether they're single, coupled, still working, or retired, more and more seniors today are realizing that nothing hurries the aging process more than inactivity.
My feeling is that old people, they say if you don't use it, you lose it. And I think this is very true, both physically and mentally. And if old people don't have opportunities for getting out and doing interesting things, it gets stale, it wears out.
Bill Meacham is 68 years old. Retirement hasn't slowed him down. He goes to a Keep Fit class twice a week, and he's part of a growing number of young seniors who help out older seniors.
Hello, Mabel. When you see who it is, then you take the chain off. Yeah. Hello, Mabel.
Hi, how you doing? Nice to see you.
For the past 3 years, Meacham has been aiding the very old, usually puttering around their places and fixing things for them.
Does that lamp need fixing? Yes. Uh-huh. Cool. All right, I'll go over and see what I can do. It's just a new bulb in it. And we'll see what happens. Well, it seems to be working all right. I put a new one in the bedroom ceiling. And now I got another one that's out in the bedroom. That lamp came from Africa. It's the way you look at life that counts. And if you have a bright and cheery attitude, it helps your day.
Inside this remarkable institution is another institution. Betty Oliphant is 63 years old. More than 20 years ago, she founded the National Ballet School, the training ground for many of Canada's principal dancers.
Suddenly, finish nicely. Suddenly did a turn you to the side. Just shows you ain't concentrating. Listen,
today, Oliphant is still director and principal instructor of the school, still doing what she does best and loves most.
I love teaching, and I think I wouldn't feel fulfilled if I wasn't teaching. I mean, that's the kind of part of my job that I like. I'm not crazy about the administrative side of it. I do it because I have to, but it's teaching, really, and it's working with young people that keeps me going.
A few years ago, a stroke slowed her down, but it's her vast knowledge of dance and technique that makes Oliphant indispensable.
I've always worked. I suppose I'm in the habit of working hard, you know. I don't want to retire until I either get gaga or my board of directors don't want me anymore, or something like that.
That's not about to happen. Recently, Oliphant's administrators made her honorary founder in perpetuity. As long as she wants to teach, she can.
Bend to the side, 1. Up, 2. To the wall, 3. Port de bras through 2nd.
This body belongs to 74-year-old Bill Wood. At least 3 times a week he's at a local swimming pool, putting in between 20 to 30 laps.
I think I'm healthier today than I was 20 years ago.
This is his prescription for keeping young.
I would say the first thing you have to do is eat a sensible diet. Secondly, get out and get that walk. If you get it before breakfast or in the morning, but get about a half an hour's walk. I think with any luck, I might see 2,000, unless I have an accident.
Phil and Bessie Stallworthy are as active as any couple could be. They entertain twice a week. They love to travel and recently returned from Europe. They've even backpacked in the Rockies. They're photography buffs. They'll even use me as a subject.
Yeah, hold the mic up. That's good. Okay. That's great.
Here, Phil, if you just stand there like that. Oh, no, put your head the other way a bit. I can take my picture because you're shielding that big light.
Okay.
I've done it.
Well, we certainly have had a super time. There's no doubt about that. We've enjoyed our retirement tremendously, and I think mainly because we're together. It would have been pretty dead without Bessie.
The Stallworthys are financially sound. Phil took out RRSPs a few years ago. He gets a company pension and still works part-time 3 days a week.
Excuse me.
Oh, hi, Tom.
I wonder if you can tell me who printed these cards we need made up for Les Jump.
The only thing that you think about the odd time is that life's getting shorter. There aren't so many years left as there were 10 years ago. But that really doesn't bother me either, because I feel, well, every year is going to be, it's going to count for me, you know. Every day is going to be super. So, as a matter of fact, I've often said to my kids, when you bury me, you're going to sing, praise God from whom all blessings flow, because the old girl's had a good life.
Barbara's here in the studio now. Barbara, I know every reporter goes into a project like that one with a certain number of preconceptions, and usually has a few of them blown away in the first half day of work. What was your preconception about the elderly?
Probably that, this might be a little dangerous to say, but that they were very much alike, that they were old people and they didn't have a tremendous variety and sense of personality. I have come away with the impression that they are as vital and as personalized as you and I. They're just a little older than you and I.
What's the main danger? I suspect it's isolation. I suspect when you're isolated
you mean
and
it's
you're
simply
old,
growing old, the danger of being old today?
That's right, the danger of finally losing your vitality and starting to slide.
I think the main danger is isolation. To me, I compare or equivalate isolation with desolation, whether they be in their own homes or in nursing homes. If nobody comes to see these people, they feel tremendously strained and distressed. And I think that is absolutely the worst, probably even worse than being financially desperate.
Of course, I'm at the very leading edge of the baby boom era, a few years younger. But by the time we get to be 65 and 70, there are going to be one hell of a lot of us around. And I expect because of that, society will treat its elderly with a little more civility.
Well, it's very interesting. I think you and I are very much more aware, and I think we will be probably a lot more politicized. Many of the people with whom we have spoke have said that we will demand a lot more in terms of pension, respect, and involvement in the political sphere. If we don't, maybe our old age won't be worth going to or looking forward to.
Okay, Barbara, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Interesting series. After this, another open phone conversation about the Constitution and the future of the country. I don't want to focus on the technical details of the document, but on your sense of the pressures the country is encountering from Quebec, from the West, from Washington, from wherever. As a warm-up, we sent a cameraman out tonight to ask a few more people the question, do you think Canada will survive its second century?
Yes, I do think Canada will survive. I think we'll stay together as a country, and that way will be stronger together.
I certainly do. That it's pretty good so far. They're going to continue to do good. They're going to get better as they go along.
I think Canada on its own could likely survive, but I don't know if Canada can survive having President Reagan and his man Haig perhaps leading the United States into war, and perhaps having Russia involved as well.
Now, our fifth and last open phone conversation about the future of the country, the night before the arrival of the Canada Act. You may feel we have the future completely under control. You may not. To the phones. Canada's future, are you hopeful?
Hi, Bill. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. This is Dan Fewings, the Lindsay Town Fool.
Oh, indeed?
Yes.
And is the Lindsay Town Fool hopeful about Canada's future?
Well, not really. I think the nuclear reactor we've sold to Argentina, Bill, is going to come back and haunt us in about 5 years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And whoever's left in Canada, I think, is going to have to take the document and trade it in for a bus trip to Buffalo.
Do you think that foolery of your sort is essential to a nation's mental health?
Oh, most definitely.
Can you save us from our own future?
Yeah, I believe so. I think that may be one of the things that does save us. Seriously now.
Well, let me ask you then, finally, is post-Constitution Canada a foolish country?
Definitely.
Tom, it's nice to hear from you. Thank you very much.
Good night.
You're on the air. Canada's future, are you hopeful?
No, definitely not.
Why not?
Well, the way the recession is coming in, the way the old people are being treated, money being wasted, unless somebody starts pulling their socks up and starts looking around doing things, this country is going to go down. Like we've seen other countries go down.
The people in Ottawa argue that the recession is a worldwide phenomenon, that Ottawa hasn't caused a whole lot of this, that everybody's hurting. What do you think?
I agree with that. After spending 28 years overseas and seeing what happened in England, it's not all the government's fault. It's a lot of it can fall back on the workers.
Well, do you think then if the recession does bottom out, that if the economy starts turning around, that there will be some hope for Canada's future?
Yes, but it'll have to be done quickly.
And you don't think it's going to happen quickly enough?
No, because there's too much argument when the medical staff, old people and that, like it's been on the media and in the papers, have got to come out and strike, withdraw their services, like it's doing now. And this is not the only country it's been done in. I think that the country hasn't got much of a future.
Okay, thank you very much for your call. You're on the air. Canada's future, are you hopeful?
No, I'm not.
Why not, sir?
Well, I'll tell you quite frankly, with Mr. Trudeau up there, I have several doubts as to our own, shall we say, identity. Number one, of course, is that Mr. Trudeau has, of course, invoked this, how would you say it, civilian internment camps. He has also provided less funds for universities, and you'll find the same problem in Russia and other countries as such.
Okay, let me just cut in here. Mr. Trudeau is not cemented into office. Nobody ordained that he remain with us until the end of the century or the middle of the next one. After Pierre Trudeau goes, there will be another administration. Now, do you think that Pierre Trudeau has done irreversible damage to the fabric of the country?
Very much so, yes, I do. Mr. Trudeau has left one thing which is quite worrisome to us now especially, and that is, of course, the very weakness of our military arms or forces. We have a problem in St. Pierre and Miquelon that, of course, we all are aware of, is now being seen in the Falklands. We have 2 islands which are within the St. Lawrence Gulf that seem to lie between the St. Lawrence and Newfoundland.
Well, I know I've spent a little time in St. Pierre and Miquelon, and I have a difficult time seeing them as the Falklands, although I suppose the Falklands had a difficult time imagining any of this was going to happen. Thank you for your call. I think we're getting off the point just a touch, but thank you very much for your observations. You're on the air. Canada's future. Are you hopeful?
Yes, I am. Provided Canada follows a few guidelines for the future.
Give me one prescription.
We don't have to worry about Quebec. René Lévesque is a defeated man.
Now, wait a minute. Trying to predict Quebec politics, I think, is a fool's game. Okay. There was no possible way that René Lévesque could have won the last provincial election even 3 weeks before it happened.
That's true. Okay, let me make my points. First of all, I think we have to become a more active part of the world community in terms of awareness. We cannot remain dependent on the United States. I think we can see where the United States is heading right now, and we really have to become more part of the world community.
Do you see any sign of that happening?
Yes, I think so. I think with people like Pierre Trudeau, who is an international statesman, and I think that's where he's going to be heading now. I think he's going to be getting into the world scenes one way or another, and I think
let me just draw you on one more point here, and where we seem to be talking a lot about Pierre Trudeau tonight, but it seems to me that during the reign of Pierre Trudeau over the last 12 years, Canadians have become, in the international sense, more narrow, more provincial, more parochial, even with this intensely international man leading them. Why is that?
I think that Pierre Trudeau has been a really honest man all along, and I think they've frightened Canadians, because Canadians do tend to be very conservative. We're British Empire loyalists, and we think that that's enough, and I think that's no longer enough. Now that we're no longer a nation of British Empire loyalists, we are now a nation of immigrants, and I think that's where we have to count on being our future lies.
Nice. That's a nice point to stop. Even if it weren't a nice point to stop, we'd have to stop. Because I'm getting the wind-up thing, and so I'm afraid you can't. You don't know the script assistant here. She'll have my head. Thank you very much for calling. Thank you all for calling. It's been a fascinating week on the phones. And thank you. Well, I think we'll make it. We'll be back in a moment.
You have become beings of light.
The weather, 50% weekend with the forecast, Brian Hill.
But we had a 100% day. The last 2 days have been just terrific, really. And it's because of this giant dome of high pressure here that's working its way out to the East Coast now. And this is what has been happening. It's been pulling up this warm southerly flow of beautifully warm air up into southern Ontario. And that is going to really come in conflict with the cold air mass coming down here. This low-pressure area here is going to bring us rain all the way through Saturday, as it's been raining this evening. And this is the clash that happens, unfortunately. But they had snow in Kenora. Be thankful you weren't up there, or perhaps at Churchill at -20 today. I'll show you the temperatures we had in Toronto a little bit later. But boy, they were something. Colder on Saturday, and a little bit cooler than that on Sunday. I take that back. This cold air will not reach us until Sunday. It's going to be wet and muggy tomorrow on Saturday, cooling off and becoming sunny on Sunday. This is what it should look like for the next 3 days in Toronto the Good. For Saturday, it's going to be kind of a gray day in general, mostly cloudy, chance of isolated showers passing through from time to time, but very warm at 20 for the high and 13 for the low, and then it cools off a little bit, but the sun returns on Sunday, 10 for the high and 3 for the low. Monday will be nice with 13 for the high and 3 for the low. Now take a look at some of these temperatures I have for you across southern Ontario today. Windsor, 23, and then Hamilton, 24, and St. Catharines was the hot spot for southern Ontario at 25 or 77. Buffalo got as high as 80 degrees and 27. Well, it was tonight was wet, let's face it. The temperature outside tonight, 14 Celsius or 57 Fahrenheit. The winds from the southeast at 9 kilometers per hour. The barometric pressure, 101.2 kilopascals, and it's falling as the low comes in. Let's take a look up north. Aha, Muskoka, 20 today, Kingston, 15, and tonight in Toronto, in case you haven't noticed, it's wet out there. It's umbrella time, but it will be relatively mild overnight at 13 degrees, 16 in the morning, and you're still going to need your umbrella once again. I'll be back to see you on, on Monday, taking a week off. Bill, that's City Pulse weather.
Thank you, Brian. On the entertainment scene, Vancouver's Powder Blues Band and the Planetarium's latest light show.
Anyone familiar with the Laserium show staged at the McLaughlin Planetarium will be excited to hear about their new laser light show, Crystal Odyssey, which opened today. The concept of Crystal Odyssey and the Laserium shows was developed by Ivan Dreyer, the president of California-based Laser Images Incorporated, the leader in the laser entertainment industry. His idea for space-aged laser shows came from a background in film and astronomy.
I had worked for many years at the Griffith Planetarium in Los Angeles, and so that's where the idea of doing it there came from. And it seemed like a ready-made environment, having the stars and the dome and the special environment that it is. As it turned out, it has been very effective for our presentations.
Unlike the Laserium shows, which were based around rock music, Crystal Odyssey has a classical score, which Dreyer hopes will attract a much broader audience. Odyssey also incorporates some incredible new technology, an argon laser that will actually produce images in the air. Dreyer feels these laser extravaganzas are the leading edge of the future of the entertainment industry.
I think that conventional film is going to be relegated pretty much to home presentations, because as TV screens get bigger and sound gets better in the home, and costs are higher to go out, people will be more inclined to stay home and watch things in their home entertainment centers. Whereas the things that will lure them out of their homes will be spectacles that they can't reproduce at home.
Crystal Odyssey is performed live each night at the planetarium for an indefinite run. For more information, contact the Royal Ontario Museum. Now here's Jeannie Becker with a more traditional form of entertainment.
Was up and down, I had nothing but my guitar and some blue jeans on. Looking for a cure, I've been looking for years. The ultimate drink for my thirsty ear.
When the Powder Blues sing the blues, it makes you feel happy. This tight Vancouver-based band has rocked the Canadian music scene since 1980, when, turned down by every major label in the country, they formed their own label and released a first album that sold 20,000 copies in the first week it was released. A successful second album followed, and this summer will see the band's third album. The Powder Blues were in town for a gig at the El Macombo, impressing fans with the fact that the blues can be a very up kind of music.
I know that you've had a really eclectic kind of musical background. Is that what you attribute the success of the Powder Blues band to?
There's a pretty unique chemistry. Everyone has come from a different bag in the band, and all the guys have been playing a long time. It's not kids. I think part of the reason for Powder Blues' success is that basically we play real happy music. From a theory point of view, it's all based on major chords, and there's a lot of bands that reflect a different attitude toward the world, which is equally as valid, but not nearly as exhilarating. Music is one of the nicest things about it is it's relatively pollution-free. It disappears in the air, and if it's done right, leaves some good feelings.
Every reporter asked me why I'm playing a band. There's so much trouble in this old land. I said I do what I like. I've been doing it for years.
You can see more of the Powder Blues this weekend on the New Music. And on the Shulman File this weekend, it's a show on cheating wives that lets us in on some of the reasons women have affairs.
I was lonely. My husband would never take me out.
Touch is what I was looking for, companionship.
I think I did it just to prove to myself that I was still attractive.
It just happened naturally. I wasn't looking for anything.
More on this topic on the Shulman File Sunday at 10:30 p.m. I'm Jeannie Becker for CityPulse Tonight.
Now, Peter Gross in sports.
Hey, warm up your $20. Earlier today, the Blue Jays shut out the Red Sox in Fenway 2-0. Luis Leal and Roy Lee Jackson combined for the shutout. Jesse Barfield drove in both runs with a triple. Bad news, though, for Team Canada against the Czechs today. The Czechs were cranky after losing to West Germany, and they beat our guys 6-2. That's Dudacek to Klodacek to Czechacek. Anyways, 6-2 the final score. Was 3-2 with about 4 minutes to go. And the Czechs got 3 in the dying minutes. So Team Canada is 1-1. Now, in the Garden in Boston tonight, it was a 2-2 tie in the second period. Middleton passes in front to Peterson. It's 3-2 for the Bruins, who won last night. Then Tom Fergus scores a nice goal here, beating John Garrett in the net for Quebec. Garrett did not have a good night. That made it 4-2. Then Brent Peterson is put into the clear, or the semi-clear, but he makes a nice play here. Anyways, on the backhand. Final score in this game, 8-4 for Boston over the Nordique. The Bruins lead this series 2-0. And on Long Island, you will see Denny Potvin scoring the first goal of the game if we can just get rid of these crowds. Thank you. Okay, the shot by Potvin. It's 1-0 for the Islanders over the Rangers in the Battle of New York. Butch Goring sets up. Okay, let me see a replay. There's Butch Goring. He's going to set up Carroll to make it 2-0. Actually, right now, I think it's 6-1 for the Islanders. The Rangers won last night 5-4, but the Islanders are going to take care of this one to tie the series up at 1 game apiece. Now, tonight at Massey Hall, just a couple blocks from City Television, a boxing card. And we're looking at Roy Gumbs, the fellow in the blue trunks, up against Manning Galloway. Now, Gumbs was losing badly, but he came on very strong in this, the 10th round. Watch, he puts Galloway to the canvas, and the referee gives him the compulsory count. And you'll see in the dying seconds of the round that Galloway is just about to pass out. Watch some of the action here. And unbelievably, this fight was considered a draw because Gumbs was pummeled earlier in the fight. Something a little different, not so much contact. Some of the action that you're going to see Sunday at the Gardens in the Pro Skate. We're looking at Robin Cousins, and watch this. He has a spectacular move coming up in just a few seconds. You won't believe it. Believe me, I couldn't do that. And we'll look at some of the nice action of the pairs here. Well, nice for the guy, not so nice for Candy Jones. That's Don Fraser tossing her around. The Pro Skate this Sunday at the Gardens. Now, earlier today, this was the Blizzard practicing for their home opener tomorrow at the CNE against the Tulsa Roughnecks. That game will be at 8 o'clock starting time. And although this practice was pretty important, probably not as important as what was going on in another corner of the field. This is an Armadillo, one of 12 that will be in a great Armadillo race at halftime during the soccer game. I'm going to be one of the jockeys, and I met my steed today. His name is Stubtail, from the famous immortal Stub and the great racing mare Tail, known for blazing speed and fantastic endurance. He is the red hot favorite, and we practice out on the AstroTurf today. But what about our race strategy? What I figure we're going to do is we are just going to leave the gate very casually and stalk the early pace, okay? If we just run our own race, I think we'll be fine. You know, don't worry about the others. We're the ones to beat. I took Stubtail for his final, very important workout. He went 50 feet in a blazing 48-3. Those are dazzling fractions. And I started to worry, you know, pre-race anxieties. Can he handle the AstroTurf? What if we draw an outside post position? It's supposed to rain. I mean, is he a good mutter? Will we achieve symmetry for the first time? These are problems you experience like that horse racing at Greenwood. This was the 7th race. Number 4, Match to Win. Well, it was Match to Win with Danny Becken, paid $10.40. You see number 5, Peter's Love, coming second. That's kind of intolerable to me, but Match to Win wins at Peter's Love. His second Winter Cottage is 3rd. In the 8th race, number 6, Norbrook's Count, takes over the lead for apprentice jockey Dale Hemsley at the head of the stretch. Hemsley having a good spring. His horse paid $14.60. Number 2, Mine Next, was next for Larry Attard. Number 10, Jamie Baby came 3rd. 6-2-10 Triactor, $1,294.20. Nice race by Norbrook's Count, but really he's no Stubtail. Okay, Blue Jays won, and the Islanders have won, and the Bruins have won.
How much do those cost?
The Armadillos?
The Armadillos.
I have no idea.
Okay, I warn you at home. I want one of those. I'll take it for walks and everything. I'll clean up after it.
Hang on a second. When I held it up, well, I don't think you want an Armadillo.
I'll clean up after it and give it water and food and everything. You'll love it, really.
Won't bring
as much as you love
paper.
the turkey. The latest from the streets of Toronto when we return in a moment. From the 5th floor newsroom, our chief assignment editor, Glenn Cole, and Street Beat.
Well, Bill, the rain certainly hasn't helped our traffic conditions tonight. A lot of fender benders all over the place, and that means, of course, that a lot of police officers are tied up dealing with the get-togethers. But as of today, there will be 44 more police officers out working in the streets. Class number 8104 graduated today at the Charles O. Bick College. 35 males, 9 females received the coveted Red Hat badge, or rather Red Hat band, which identifies them as full-fledged police officers. As is the usual case, there was a full inspection and receiving of diplomas, and then out to work. We wish them good luck and Godspeed. Have yourself a beautiful weekend. Buckle up and drive safely, and that's Street Beat for this week. Bill?
Thank you, Glenn. Now, Brian Hill on Queen Street with another look at the weather.
Well, I guess I'm up. Unfortunately, come on over here. This is the cameraman, and he's not behind the camera at the moment, but he's holding the umbrella over me. Thanks very much. The rain is going to continue on through tomorrow, and it's going to, we'll lose it all on Sunday. Sunday should be the best day of the weekend. I'll see you a week from this coming Monday. Back to you.
And much better than we see you. Monday, the second week of rotating strikes by Ontario doctors, the Board of Directors of the Ontario Medical Association planned a meeting to discuss further action. We'll have all the details for you tomorrow or Monday on City Pulse. And Peter, that I assume is an armadillo.
No, it's a visual aid.
Sorry.
See, the Blizzard are opening their season tomorrow night at the CNE, and you will see armadillos and almadillos and myself and soccer tomorrow night at the CNE.
Thank you, Peter. By way of closing, I have decided what I am going to do about the new Constitution, nothing, which is the same thing I'm going to do about the lack of a domed stadium in Toronto and the Maple Leafs and the fact that my bakery is always out of bagels by noon on Sunday. Nothing at all about any of these things for at least a week. The Italians have a lovely phrase for this, dolce far niente. It is sweet to do nothing. And I am in my annual April Italian mood, and so is my wife, and so is my dog, and so is my cat. We are going to do nothing much for a week except sit on the front porch and drink beer out of the bottle and depress neighborhood property values. Gord Martineau will be sitting in. I'll be back a week Tuesday with a lot of nothing behind me. See you then. That's this edition of City Pulse for all of us working the late shift here on Queen Street East. Thank you. Have a good weekend. See you in a week. Good night.
And Rita, but now we would like to do a tune dedicated to the Constitution of Canada on behalf of the 14 Spruce Street Cabbagetown Community Band called The Tribute. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Vibrations picking up. It only takes a spark to make your day a happy day. Each day, each day, finding a way is a natural thing. Wanting it so much brings it closer to the touch a billion ways. The time has come for me and you to sing this little tune. Be seeing you real soon. No greater